The morning sun cast long shadows across the Wyoming rangeland as Jake Morrison guided his horse Thunder along the familiar path beside Silver Creek. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of dry grass and distant pine. Jake had been checking the fence line for breaks after last week's storm, a routine task that had become second nature after 25 years of ranching. Thunder's ears suddenly perked up, and the horse slowed to a cautious walk. Jake frowned, scanning the creek that ran higher than usual from recent rains. The water moved swiftly, carrying debris from upstream, branches, leaves, and what looked like, "Whoa, boy," Jake whispered, pulling the reins as his heart skipped a beat. There, bobbing gently in the current about 30 yards downstream, was what appeared to be a makeshift cradle. And inside it, Jake could make out the unmistakable silhouette of a small child. Without hesitation, Jake spurred Thunder forward, his mind racing. How long had the child been in the water? Was it even alive? The cradle, if that's what it was, seemed to be floating remarkably well, as if someone had waterproofed it deliberately. "Easy, Thunder," Jake murmured as they reached the water's edge. The current was strong, but the cradle had caught on a fallen log just ahead. Jake dismounted quickly, his boots splashing into the shallow water as he waded out toward the child. The sight that greeted him took his breath away. A toddler, no more than 2 years old, sat wide-eyed in what was indeed a carefully constructed floating cradle. The child was wrapped in a waterproof blanket, and amazingly, seemed completely dry and unharmed. Large brown eyes stared up at Jake with curiosity rather than fear. "Hey there, little one," Jake said softly, his voice gentle despite his racing heart. "Let's get you out of here." The child, Jake could see now it was a little girl, reached up her small arms toward him as if she'd been waiting for rescue all along. As Jake carefully lifted her from the cradle, he noticed something that made his throat tighten. Pinned to her blanket was a handwritten note in a plastic bag. Back at the ranch house, Jake sat at his kitchen table with the little girl on his lap, both of them wrapped in warm blankets. She had accepted a cup of warm milk and some crackers, eating with the appetite of a healthy child. Her dark hair was still damp, but she seemed remarkably untraumatized by her ordeal. With trembling hands, Jake opened the plastic bag and unfolded the note. The handwriting was hurried but legible. "Please take care of my baby girl. Her name is Emma. She's 20 months old and loves to sing. I can't give her what she needs, but I know someone with a good heart will find her. I made sure she would be safe in the water. Please love her. A desperate mother." Jake read the note 3 times, his weathered hands shaking slightly. Emma looked up at him and babbled something that sounded almost like "Mama," then pointed toward the window where Thunder was grazing in the paddock. "Your mama made sure you'd be safe," Jake whispered, brushing a strand of hair from Emma's forehead. "But what am I supposed to do now, little one?" Jake had been alone on the ranch for 8 years, ever since his wife Sarah died in a car accident. They'd never been able to have children of their own, and Sarah had always said it was God's way of preparing them for something else. Looking at Emma now, Jake wondered if this was what she'd meant. He reached for his phone and hesitated. He should call the sheriff, report the found child, let the authorities handle it. That was the right thing to do. But something in Emma's trusting eyes made him pause. "Let me think about this for a minute," he said aloud, and Emma clapped her hands as if she approved. Jake made a decision. He would call his neighbor, Mary Rodriguez, first. Mary had raised 5 children and would know what to do. She was also the closest thing to family Jake had left in the world. Mary Rodriguez arrived within 20 minutes of Jake's call, her pickup truck kicking up dust as she parked beside the ranch house. At 62, Mary was a force of nature, a widow who had successfully raised 5 children while managing her late husband's veterinary practice. "Dios mío," Mary breathed as she saw Emma in Jake's arms. "She's beautiful. And you found her in the creek?" Jake nodded, handing Mary the note. As she read it, her expression shifted from surprise to concern to something resembling determination. "Jake, you know you have to call the authorities," Mary said, but her voice was gentle. "This child needs to be reported as found. There could be parents looking for her, or they could put her in the system." Jake interrupted. "Mary, you read that note. Her mother deliberately put her in that cradle, made sure she'd float safely. She was hoping someone would find her and care for her. Mary studied Jake's face, seeing something there she hadn't seen since before Sarah died. A spark of purpose, of hope. "You're thinking of keeping her," Mary said. It wasn't a question. "I'm thinking of making sure she's safe," Jake replied. "At least until we know more about her situation." Emma, who had been quietly playing with a wooden spoon Jake had given her, suddenly looked up at Mary and smiled. It was a smile that could melt the hardest heart, and Mary felt her resolve weakening. "Jake, I understand what you're feeling, but this is complicated. There are legal issues, social services, background checks." "I know," Jake said. "But Mary, Sarah, and I always talk about adoption. We never went through with it because we were waiting for the right time. Maybe this is it." Mary looked at Emma, who was now trying to stand on Jake's lap, her tiny hands gripping his shirt. The child looked healthy, happy, and remarkably well-adjusted for someone who had just been through what should have been a traumatic experience. "Okay," Mary said finally. "Here's what we're going to do. We call Sheriff Martinez. He's a good man, and he'll handle this sensitively. But first, we make sure Emma is healthy and safe. I'll examine her, and then we'll figure out the next steps together." Sheriff Carlos Martinez had known Jake Morrison for 15 years, and he'd never seen a rancher look so protective or so hopeful. Emma sat contentedly in Jake's lap, while Mary finished her informal medical examination. "She's in perfect health," Mary reported. "Well-fed, clean, no signs of abuse or neglect. Whoever cared for her before this morning did a good job." Sheriff Martinez nodded, making notes in his pad. "Jake, I have to ask, are you sure about the timeline? You found her around 9 a.m.? "Yes, sir. I was checking the fence line after last week's storm. The creek was running high, and she was caught on a fallen log about a quarter-mile downstream from where I found her. That means she could have been in the water for hours, depending on where she was put upstream." Martinez mused. "The current's been strong since the rain." Emma babbled something and pointed at the sheriff's badge, making him smile despite the serious situation. "She's a charmer," Martinez said. "Jake, I have to follow protocol here. I need to file a report, check missing children databases, and contact social services. But—" He paused, looking at how naturally Emma had settled into Jake's arms. "I can also recommend temporary emergency placement with you while we investigate, given that you're the one who found her and she seems comfortable here." Jake's relief was visible. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means Emma can stay with you temporarily while we try to locate her family or determine what happened. You'll need to undergo a background check, but I can expedite that. Mary, would you be willing to help with childcare and serve as a character reference?" "Of course," Mary said immediately. "I can help Jake with whatever Emma needs." Martinez closed his notepad. "I'll file the report and start the search for her family. In the meantime, Jake, you're officially Emma's temporary guardian. But understand, if we find her family or if social services determines another placement is better for her, you'll have to let her go." Jake nodded, knowing the sheriff was right, but hoping it wouldn't come to that. Emma had already stolen his heart, and he could see Sarah's influence in his immediate connection to this child. 3 weeks had passed since Jake found Emma, and the ranch house had transformed in ways he never expected. The spare bedroom now held a crib that Mary had brought from her storage, along with toys, clothes, and children's books donated by neighbors who had heard about the mysterious toddler. Emma had adapted to ranch life with remarkable ease. She followed Jake everywhere, her small legs working hard to keep up as he did his daily chores. She loved the horses, especially Thunder, and would clap and laugh whenever Jake lifted her onto the gentle gelding's back. "She's a natural," Mary observed one afternoon as they watched Emma fearlessly pet Thunder's nose. "It's like she was born to this life." Jake nodded, unable to hide his smile. "She's got no fear at all. Yesterday she tried to follow me into the barn when I was moving the bull to the south pasture. Any word from Sheriff Martinez about her family?" Jake's expression grew more serious. "He's checked every missing children database in a 5-state radius. No matches. No reports of a missing toddler fitting Emma's description. It's like she appeared out of nowhere." Mary watched Emma, who was now trying to climb onto a hay bale, her determination evident in every movement. Maybe that's exactly what happened, Jake. Maybe her mother knew she was putting Emma exactly where she needed to be. The sound of a car approaching made them both look up. Sheriff Martinez was pulling into the yard, and Jake felt his stomach tighten. Any visit from the sheriff these days could mean news about Emma's future. Jake, Mary. Martinez greeted them as he got out his patrol car. Emma ran to him immediately, having grown comfortable with the sheriff over his regular visits. "Any news?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Martinez picked up Emma, who was tugging on his badge. "That depends on how you look at it. I've completed the investigation. No missing person reports, no leads on the mother's identity. No relatives have come forward. As far as the law is concerned, Emma is officially a ward of the state." Jake's heart sank, but Martinez held up a hand. "However, Social Services has reviewed your temporary guardianship, and they're impressed. Emma is thriving. You've passed all background checks, and you have strong community support. They're prepared to recommend you for permanent guardianship, if that's what you want." That evening, Jake sat in his living room with Emma asleep in his arms, her small body warm against his chest. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the old grandfather clock and the distant sound of cattle settling for the night. Mary had gone home after helping with Emma's bedtime routine, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts. The sheriff's news should have made him happy. Emma could stay, could officially become his daughter. But something was troubling him. He thought about the note Emma's mother had left, about the desperation in those hastily written words. Somewhere out there was a woman who had made the most difficult decision of her life, trusting that her daughter would find safety and love. Jake's phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The caller ID showed Mary's number. "Jake, I hope I'm not calling too late." Mary's voice was gentle. "I just wanted to check on you. You seemed troubled after the sheriff left." "I am troubled," Jake admitted. "Mary, what if Emma's mother changes her mind? What if she's out there somewhere, regretting her decision?" There was a pause. "Jake, honey, you can't live your life waiting for what-ifs. Emma's mother made her choice, and it was an incredibly brave one. She could have left Emma anywhere, but she chose to put her in that creek because she knew it would lead to you. How could she have known that? Maybe she didn't know it would be you specifically, but she knew someone would find Emma, someone who would love her. And Jake, look at Emma now. She's happy, healthy, and thriving. You've given her exactly what her mother hoped for." Jake looked down at Emma's peaceful face. In the 3 weeks since he'd found her, she had become the center of his world. She had brought laughter back into his house, purpose back into his days. "Mary, I want to adopt her officially," Jake said. "I want to give her everything, my name, my home, my love, everything Sarah and I would have given our own child." "Then that's what you should do," Mary said softly. "Sarah will be proud of you, Jake. She'd love Emma as much as you do." 6 months later, Jake stood in the county courthouse, his hands shaking slightly as he held the adoption papers. Emma, now walking confidently and chattering in her own toddler language, was dressed in a tiny blue dress that Mary had bought for the occasion. Judge Patricia Hawkins, a stern-looking woman with kind eyes, reviewed the documents carefully before looking up at Jake. "Mr. Morrison, I've reviewed your case extensively. The social workers report that Emma is thriving in your care, and I've received letters of support from neighbors, your veterinarian, Emma's pediatrician, and even your local pastor. This is one of the most comprehensive adoption files I've seen." Jake nodded, trying to steady his breathing. Emma was playing with a small toy horse, completely unaware of the life-changing moment unfolding around her. "However," Judge Hawkins continued, "I want to make sure you understand the magnitude of what you're undertaking. Adopting a child is a lifelong commitment. There will be challenges, teenage years, college expenses, heartbreak, and joy in equal measure." "Your Honor," Jake said, his voice steady despite his nerves, "I've been alone on my ranch for 8 years. Emma has brought life back into my world. She's already my daughter in every way that matters. I just want to make it official." Judge Hawkins smiled, the first time Jake had seen her expression soften. "Mary Rodriguez is here to serve as your witness, I see." Mary stepped forward, beaming with pride. Your Honor, I've known Jake Morrison for 20 years. He's one of the most decent, hard-working men I've ever known. Emma couldn't ask for a better father. The judge looked at Emma, who chose that moment to look up and give everyone in the courtroom her brightest smile. Well, Emma seems to approve. Judge Hawkins said with a chuckle, Mr. Morrison, it gives me great pleasure to grant this adoption petition. Emma Morrison, you are now officially your father's daughter. Jake felt tears streaming down his face as he picked up Emma and held her close. She giggled and patted his cheeks, seemingly delighted by the attention. 2 years had passed since the adoption, and Jake could barely remember what life had been like before Emma. The ranch had become a different place, safer, with child-proof latches on cabinets and fencing around the machinery. But it had also become more alive, filled with the sound of Emma's laughter and the constant chatter of a 4-year-old who had questions about everything. Jake was teaching Emma to ride on Thunder, the old horse now serving as the perfect gentle mount for a small child. She sat in front of Jake, her small hands gripping the saddle horn, her face bright with excitement. Daddy, can we go to the creek? Emma asked, her vocabulary now extensive and her personality clearly established as fearless and curious. Jake smiled. They often rode to Silver Creek, and Emma loved to throw stones into the water and watch the ripples. She had no memory of being found there, of course, but Jake sometimes wondered if she felt some connection to the place. Sure, sweetheart, but we have to be careful near the water, remember? I remember, Daddy. Water can be dangerous. As they rode toward the creek, Jake reflected on how completely his life had changed. He had a daughter to raise, a future plan, and a purpose that went beyond maintaining the ranch. Mary often joked that Emma had saved Jake as much as it saved her. At the creek, Emma dismounted with Jake's help and immediately began collecting smooth stones. The water was lower now, running clear and gentle in the late summer heat. Daddy, tell me the story again, Emma said, settling beside Jake on a fallen log. Jake smiled. Emma loved to hear the story of how he found her, though he always kept it simple and age-appropriate. Well, Thunder and I were riding along the creek, checking the fences. As Jake told the familiar story, he watched Emma's face light up with delight. She had heard it dozens of times, but it never lost its magic for her. And then you saved me, Emma concluded, as she always did. No, sweetheart, Jake said, pulling her close. You saved me. Emma looked up at him with Sarah's eyes. That's what Mary always said, that Emma had inherited Sarah's gift for seeing the best in everyone. Daddy, do you think my first mommy is happy? Jake was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. I think she's very happy, Emma, because she knows you're loved and safe and growing up to be an amazing little girl. Emma nodded solemnly, then brightened as she spotted a particularly interesting rock. As she ran to collect it, Jake sent a silent thank you to the unknown woman who had made the hardest decision of her life. Emma's mother had given him the greatest gift imaginable, the chance to be a father, to love and protect and guide this incredible little girl. The sun was setting over the Wyoming hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Jake watched Emma play by the water's edge, her laughter echoing across the rangeland. He thought about the future, school years, piano lessons, teaching her drive, walking her down the aisle someday. Come on, Emma, he called. Let's head home. Mary's making her famous enchiladas for dinner. Emma ran to him, her pockets full of creek stones and her face glowing with happiness. As Jake lifted her onto Thunder's back, she wrapped her small arms around his neck and whispered, I love you, Daddy. I love you too, sweetheart, Jake replied, his heart full, more than all the stars in the sky. As they rode back toward the ranch house, Jake Morrison knew that sometimes the most beautiful chapters of life begin with the most unexpected discoveries. Emma had floated into his life on a creek that morning 3 years ago, and she had changed everything. She had turned a lonely rancher into a devoted father, an empty house into a home, and a man who was just surviving into one who was truly living. The ranch stretched out before them in the gathering dusk, and Jake knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, father and daughter, bound not by blood but by love, trust, and the miraculous circumstances that had brought them together on that morning when Thunder stopped at the creek bank and Jake Morrison's real life began.